Hi, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our summer release webinar. Today, we're going to be going through the releases of Compucare 842 to 844, 844 having released earlier on this week. So joining me on the webinar today, I've got my colleagues Tom and Mark, who you'll remember from previous sessions, and we've got a few exciting items that we want to run through with you. So we've got some changes to our clinicians portal, which we think will help the consultants and the medical secretaries. We've got changes to the way in which our medical record tracking is working. And we also have some sort of filter changes and some speed improvements that we need to run through. With customers uploading more and more documents to the system, we've got some changes to the way that patient attachments is working that we can run through. We have work in progress changes for the figures that you're making your accruals for at the end of the month. So we can run through some of that. And we've got an exciting first look of our Compucare dark theme that Mark will run us through at the end. So just going on to the first item, the first bit that we wanted to run through was one item of retired functionality. So I'll just go on to that. So this is really to do with a service that you have installed out on your servers called SHAC. And we used to distribute that to do a few things. We've spoken about this previously on one of the previous webinars, but it is from version 842 now onwards that this change comes into effect. So SHAC used to be there to phone home periodically to StreetSeaver to make sure you're all still valid customers, but more importantly, what it did was it told the Compucare icon or report generator icon on your desktop where the databases were and what the server name was and the database name and things like that. And it also, if you set it up this way, controlled who gets access to which database. So it might be I get access to live and training, but Tom or Mark only get access to live and things like that. So this piece of technology has been out for over 10 years. It's come to the end of its life, and we've had a bit of a relook at things as to how we want to handle things going forward. So we've got a new connection method that we're going to use, which is a client overrides file that I'll show you in just a minute that needs to be distributed across all the PCs that will be using Compucare. And then in terms of that controlling who gets access to which database, you could do that at the SQL Server level. So I could say that Stuart has access physically to those databases, whereas Mark or Tom don't. Or you can do it at machine level. So instead of rolling this file out across all the machines that have Compucare on it, just generically, you could do it so that when Stuart logs onto the PC at reception, he has access to one or two databases, but when Mark or Tom log on, they only have access to the one and things like that. So we just needed to give you notice that this is happening, because you will, when you load one of these releases, need to make a change to your config. The configuration file will look as follows. Don't worry too much about the look and feel of it there, but essentially it is saying, what's my database called, what's the server called, and what's the database called, and then we just build up a little structure of those within the file. So there's a whole knowledge base article there on how all of this is going to work. And if at the point that you're upgrading your environments to 842, or well, it'll be 844 now, given that's the latest release, you can always speak to our support desk about help with how this gets rolled out. So moving on to some of the enhancements that we've done, I'll just start off with some of the smaller ones that we'll do on the slideshow. So we've added a new option in there for being able to log out of the application. So next to the little user icon at the bottom left of the application, you can now click on the menu, and there's now a new log out option. So if you're a system administrator that tries things in the test system and then goes and does them back in the live, and you're looking for sort of cause and effect between the two systems, then previously what you had to do was you would close Compucare and then you would launch it again from the desktop, and it'd take a little bit of time to load up again, and then you'd change the database that you were logging into, and it was just cumbersome. So we've got a new log out option like most applications would have, and that'll just drop you straight back to the login screen. and you can then click on change, and you can either change the user that you're logging in with. So you could have tried setting something up on a new profile and you want to see how it looks for the actual user that it's for, or if you're swapping between live test and training, you can do that as well from there. So hopefully sysadmin users will find this quite helpful when they're configuring the system. So moving away from sort of the general system, looking at sort of default values now. You've always had the ability within Compucare to be able to book a surgical booking. And against a surgical booking, you could always say, this is the anaesthetic type planned for this booking. What we've done now is we've added a new default anaesthetic type onto the procedures code table. So if you've got a procedure, in my case, I've got a knee replacement on the screen that is, 99% of the time always going to be a general anaesthetic. You can now set that within there against the procedure, and that'll be what drops into the surgical booking as you're making it within the system. So it doesn't mean that you can't change it. So if for whatever reason it's not going to be done under general, it's going to be spinal or local or whatever it happens to be, you can change it on an individual patient basis. But the reason why we've done this is to take 2-3 clicks out the process of making every booking that your users responsible for surgical bookings would be making. So just a small change there. The next one that we've got, sticking with kind of procedure-based changes, is within Compucare, you've always been able to specify the specialty of a consultant, and you've been able in recent times to specify the services that they can offer. So on screen here, I've got the fact that my consultant can do hips and knees. But in the wake of things like the Patterson inquiry and the need for you to be able to control permitted procedures, we had another section against that clinician record called procedures, but it was very manual to go and add them. So to build up all the different types of knee and all the different types of hip operations that this clinician did, you had to come into here and you had to click that plus and keep searching and cycling around, saving and hitting the plus again. So it was quite cumbersome. So we've added a new import and export feature, which I've just zoomed in on there. So it means you can build all of this information up in Excel for your consultants, and then you can log into Dr. Jones's profile and you can go and upload that against Dr. Jones. Or we've also added it as an app in the home area as well. So you can now, as I've done here, type in import clinician procedures, and you can just upload one big file of all the procedures for all clinicians. So what this will mean is that in this case on screen, these are the only 2 procedures that Dr. Jones would be permitted to do. Any other procedure, she won't appear as being available when we search for clinicians that can offer that service. Or if we try and book a hip replacement with this consultant, it will come up and say, no, that can't be done because she's only permitted to do these 2 and things like that. So it's a really useful piece of functionality and a much quicker way of setting it up now. But just as a word of caution, you can't half do this against a consultant. If you set these against a consultant, from that point on, that is all they can do. So be really sure that you've got all the valid CCSD codes against them when you set them up. Okay. So moving on to inpatients, we've made just a little filter change within here. Wasn't really worth demoing, but we'll just highlight it on the slide. So this is just my inpatient booking screen. And if I zoom in on here and just bring up the filter panel that would be on the left-hand side, previously we used to have planned admission and admitted, and planned discharge and discharge as different date fields, and that used to get confusing for users as they were filtering the screens to make sure they were picking up the right patients and the right data. So what we've done now is we've dropped back to just having admission and discharge, a lot more obvious to the end users when they're looking for the data that they're looking for. And what that is doing behind the scenes is it's querying both the planned admission date, but also if they now are admitted, what their admission date is. And likewise, same between planned discharge and discharge. So hopefully it'll just make things a lot clearer for the users. It tidies up the filter pane as well, so that's always nice. Okay, work in progress then. So we have a work in progress app within the system. and that can be scheduled every night to go through and calculate the current work in progress. So it can go through and pseudo bill all the patients that you haven't yet billed and work out, contractually what's the income that you're going to receive for those patients when you do eventually bill them. When you come to do the sort of closing down of your current period and moving into the next one, your month-end process, there's also the ability to run work in progress at that point, because it's really important. You've obviously tried to do all of your billing, you've posted the income that you could bill at that point, but you've got some activity generally related to the end of the month, or perhaps patients that are admitted towards the end but won't be discharged till the following month. And so you might want to make some provisions in your accounts for that data. So if I just zoom in on here, you can see currently that against Andy in this case, it's going to come up and say at a nominal level, this is the income that we've got work in progress that we haven't yet billed. So at standard level, it would be 275. At actual level, it's only 220 that we're going to get on that. So if we're trying to, put those accruals through, we'd be trying to put that 220 through in this case. Now, mine's only got the one nominal code. So mine just says income. You would obviously have yours broken down by accommodation income, radiology, theatre income, and things like that. But the data that we used to hold prior to the change that I'll run through was always at that summed up nominal code level. So if you wanted to be able to look at a particular patient and their work in progress and understand, have I actually got all the charges entered that I wanted to enter, and see the data a bit more granular, what we've done now is we've added in a new option under the billing ledger settings app, which has that new toggle, generate charges. If that'll be toggled to no by default, because not everyone will want this. But if we do toggle that to yes, what it means is that 1 o'clock in the morning automatic run of the work in progress generation that my system's set to do, will start doing it instead of summed nominal code level, it will do it at charge level. So you'll have a lot more data. So the other part with this is we've got a new option in there called thread limit. So this is how many patients will Compucare try and concurrently work out the work in progress for. So by default, we set that as 2. And to be honest, I would probably leave that alone for the most part. If you've got a pretty powerful laptop or PC, and when it comes to the month end process and you're trying to generate your work in progress, what you might want to do is either take the restriction off that altogether, or increase that maybe 8 patients at a time, 10 patients at a time, something like that. And so you could end up with your work in progress app being sort of sped up for the duration that it's doing that. When it's talking about thread limits, it's really talking about the processing power of your individual PC. So, if I destricted that or increased the number, what that's going to mean is I probably can't be playing around in Excel and Outlook and Teams and everything else on my laptop. It's probably going to grind itself to a bit of a halt until it's done the work in progress. But the good bit is it will do it quicker than it would do ordinarily. So again, there's that option there. If you want to play with it, you can do, but really the main part of this change was around that generate charges. So if you do toggle this to yes, and you want to then see the data, at the moment what we haven't done is build it into this screen. If that's a requirement, we can look to do that in a future release. But for the limited number of clients that want to run the work in progress at a much more granular level, what I think we would do is just set up some reports within your report generator. We'd work with you on those to go and get that data based on the charge level. So the functionality is there. If you want to have a look and use it, speak to us and then we can help you out with that. So looking at the next one, little change on here. So a lot of customers are now using treatment function service, and that is to be able to specify against an outpatient appointment, well, what type of appointment is it? So we know whether it's new or follow-up, but are they seeing a cataract patient or a laser patient? Are they seeing a hip patient or a knee patient, and things like that? So you've now got the ability to be able to pull that through to the clinic list if you want to do so. demo, if that's at all helpful for either the consultants that you hand that to or reception to understand who's coming for what and things like that. So little change to do with waiting lists now. This one here is to do with associated bookings. So previously in the last webinar, we ran through the fact that on screen there on my reading pane on the right at the bottom of it, you can see that I've got an associated booking. So which booking relates to this waiting list entry. What we've done now is we've put this grey filter panel through the middle of the screen with some quick links on it. And if I just zoom in on it there, what it means is I can now drill on to the inpatient in this case, or if it was an outpatient related booking, the outpatient, and actually see either the booking that created this waitlist entry or the one that is associated with it that's come off the back of it. So it's just a quick link to be able to see what's going on and who's got to where and how and things like that. So Clinicians App changes, just a couple of these, and then what we'll do is we'll move on to the live demo. So within here, we have the View Results app. So if you've got your consultants or your medical secretaries logging on remotely, it's possible for them within the Clinicians app to be able to see the results of tests that they've asked for. So on screen here, I've got various pathology tests. And a couple of the changes that we've made are, one, we now show the patient and the patient's medical record number across the banner. So previously, if I'd clicked a result, the result would have come up to screen, but unless if you forgot which patient you were looking at, it wasn't visibly on the screen. So we've improved that. And the other bit that we've done within here is we were always showing the result. So in this case, I've got some vitamin D results. And we were showing the warning. So if we'd set Compucare up to say, you know, this is a high or a low result or an abnormal result for this patient, it could be coming up with a little red warning message saying that was the case against a result. But what we didn't do was allow the result free text notes that might come back from a lab system against that value to come in. We showed them in main Compucare, but we didn't show them in this app. So because the automated messages will be going out from Compucare to the consultant to say, dear Dr. Jones, here's the latest results back from the lab for you, and they're logging in here to go and get them. It's best that we give them all the information. So you can see just at the bottom, I've got some text field, you know, notes that we've sort of dummy inserted in there, but it'll be whatever comes back in the interface that goes into that notes field. So another quick change on here is when your medical secretaries are logging into the Clinicians app remotely and putting in private patients for their consultant, we now show your medical record number, the Compucare patient ID, against the patients in the grid. We show that now everywhere. So obviously on that previous results screen, when we're making the booking, when we're looking at the patient EPR within here. So it just means that if the MedSec ever has to contact you about a patient record for some reason, that she can also talk about the particular patient number that one relates to. So it just allows your system and their system to be a bit more joined up. So looking at the add booking process, if I just zoom in a little bit on this, so I've picked a date and time that I wanted to book for, and we've got some new fields on here. So we've got referrer, and so that would allow us to specify who referred that patient if the MedSec wants to put it in there. We've got the case holder, so they're able to specify themselves as being the case holder on the episode of care. So if this is Dr. Jones's MedSec making the booking, we can make it Dr. Jones that's the owner of this patient's referral. And we've also got the ability, if they want to, for them to be able to put in some diagnoses. So I've only got some dummy ones there, but it could be something like ortho-knee pain, or could be, you know, any of the pain in joint and things like that. So again, they can add those in. It's not clinical diagnoses, so it's not what's going to go out on your CDS submissions or your FIN submissions and things like that. It's the more summarized private set of diagnosis codes that will be coming up in here, and then they can obviously fill bits in, and that'll be what appears on the episode of care banner wherever you're looking at the patient and things like that. So that's it for PowerPoint for the moment. Mark will have some slides later on to run through, but what I'm going to do is I'm just going to move on to the system, and we'll start to live demo some of that. So what I'll do is just launch my system up, and that should now be sharing Compucare to screen. And the first change that we're going to have a look at is some changes that we've made to do with how we search within certain of the apps within the system. So I'm going to go into the outpatient bookings screen. And within here, I've got a filter already set up for showing me all the bookings for this month, just so I've got some data that we can be looking at. And this change that we're going through now is probably most applicable to our NHS private patient units. So any of the private hospitals will generally be using the Compucare ID to manage the patient record. When it comes to an NHS unit using the system, they will have a main PAS system. It'll be Cerner or Lorenzo or Epic or Allscripts and things like that. So they'll be working in a slightly different primary number. So the change that we've done is up in the top right here, you can see it says primary ID or name. It used to say patient ID, which meant it only ever worked off the Compucare number for the patient, which if that isn't the number that you're using day to day and you're using one of these other PAS numbers, that's not very helpful. So the change that we've made is if I just go to show you my patient settings, and I'll just search for that on here. We've got these fields in here, which I would imagine for an NHS unit, they would already have this set to case number. But if you don't and you want to primarily look at and see the Cerner or the Epic number for the patient, then you can set this here. You can also set within here whether we use the Compucare ID or name, or whether we use case number or name and things like that as the default within the system. So you could play around with these settings here. I won't change them for the moment. And then if I go back into my outpatient bookings app up here, now it says primary ID. So it's whatever that setting is on the screen I was on previously is what you can search by in here. So in my case, my primary ID is still my Compucare number, but assuming I'd changed it over to an actual PAS number, then you could be searching by ABC123 or whatever it happens to be as you go through here, and it just will allow you to filter your screen down. It means that if you've got patients showing up with an appointment letter with a barcode on, that barcode can be the PAS number, so when it scans into that field it will narrow down the list and things like that. And the other thing to mention whilst I'm looking at this in the outpatient bookings app is this is available across all of the systems. So I could be within the patient charges or billing screens. I could be within work in progress and I want to go and see what Freya's work in progress is. I can use that search facility in the top right now to search by that PAS number. So that's that change. So whilst we're in here then, and we're talking about sort of filtering of data, we've made some other changes in the system really for speed improvement. So you'll see if I just blank out this, go and get me the appointments for this month, all my data now disappears. So on here, it'll now tell me that date filters are mandatory. So this is something that you're going to need to make your users aware of as part of deploying 842 or above to your system. So the reason why we've chosen to do that is because if I have no date filter set, what I'm effectively telling Compucare is go and get me all data for all time and then build up page after page of it on the screen. So although we'll only see 25 records on the screen, if I just bring this back to something like this month, what it will do is down the bottom is it'll just have next and next and next, and you'll have an endless number of pages. So if you've been using the system for 6 years, 10 years, this gets really inefficient. It slows down all your queries and things like that. So the thing is here, they must now have dates set for what am I looking for. And again, you want to think about your pin filters down the bottom for things that will help them. So patients due today, bookings last week, whatever it is you need for them to be able to do their job, then you can get these preset and they're not having to play around with these filters all the time. So whilst we're in here, then we've got another change we've made to date filter, and I'm showing it in the Outpatient app, but it applies to, inpatients and theatre bookings as well. We've got this new custom option. So previously I could say, show me bookings today, or show me bookings yesterday, or this week, last week, and things like that. What I can now do is I can say, show me all the bookings that are in the next 10 days, and it will go through and find me those bookings. What I can also do is I can say, show me it either in the last 10 days or the next 10 days, so I can make it plus or minus and then bring more things back to the screen. So there's a couple of reasons why we've done this. One is, if you have yours traditionally set to this month, as soon as we get to 1st of August, all your data for July disappears, obviously. So you might not want that to happen if you're still making sure that yesterday's bookings have been completed off properly and things like that. So you could use your custom filter to be show me this month and last month and things like that. The other part on here is if you're chasing up deposits, so that again, more likely that you'd be doing that within the inpatient or day case side. If I want to have filters that say, show me anyone coming in the next 10 days where the deposit isn't fully paid yet, and I'm using that as a workflow, it just means you're able to filter that data a little better. So whilst we're on filters, then what I'll do is I'll just drill through to my patient record. So we'll just search for me, patient number 1, we'll open it up, and I'll go to the Outpatient Bookings app again, just so we're comparing like for like. So on the Outpatient's Bookings app in the patient area, and the other apps as well, what we've done is we've got rid of the need for the date filter. So if I want to have this as user date of today, I can do that. If I want to blank it back and say, just get me all data for all time, we're happy for that query to exist on a per patient level, because the data is never going to be that excessive that it really slows the system down. So you can have it completely open in the patient area, looking at an individual patient, but on the home area, you've got to have that mandatory date filter. The other piece that we've changed whilst we're looking at the patient area is these filters down the bottom that you can set up either globally or just for yourself now apply to the area that you're setting them up in. So if I do Stu Pat test, for want of a better name, and I could say, show me all the bookings that are happening this month and or last month and things like that, and I can save that there, and now I've got something that I can use when I'm in patient areas that I can click, but if I go back to my home screen, it isn't there. So again, it just gives you that flexibility to be able to do, what do I need to have when I'm working with lots of data versus what do I need to have when I'm working on an individual patient record. So, okay, we'll move away from filters now, and we'll start to have a look at some changes that we've done for billing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a look at my Sheduler app, and that's just going to load up for my consultant. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to move over to multiple modes so we can see a few bookings side by side. So I'm looking at appointments for today. And if I just shrink that back, I've got some rooms across the top. So I've got an ophthalmology assessment room, I've got an ophthalmologist in this case, and then I've got some other sort of optometry room as well. So we've got a patient that's coming in here where they've got multiple bookings in the day. So we've got Mr. Rutherford coming in, and they're coming in at 12 o'clock to have their eye test done. They're being seen at 12:30 to see the consultant. Oh, actually, I could do with them also seeing the optom before they go in, and I can see there's space. So what I would do is I would go and I would double click that, and I would want to go through and say, who's the patient? So we shall search for Mr. Rutherford. We'll pick up the ophthalmology episode of care in this case. And the change that I'm actually coming to is how we can make it so that you allocate the episode of care more clearly. So if you've got a patient that's all attending on the same day, multiple appointments, ideally, rather than create a separate billing episode so that you end up with 2 different invoices for the same day's work, you want to link it to an existing billing episode. So we already have those 2 appointments there. If I click on to link to existing, we've got this, okay, well, you've got a self-pay bill episode going on, and the first booking on that's the 28th. So I would probably know in this case that that was the one I wanted to link everything to. But the change that we've made is over on the right-hand side, which is to bring up this grid to say, well, actually, this billing episode is currently spanning the eye test and the consult. So in my case, I'm using an ophthalmology example, but if you think of a orthopedic one-stop clinic or something like that, you might have a patient that comes and sees the orthopod. You might have them then go off and have some radiology done. You might, schedule them in for a follow-up slightly later in the day so that they can, consultant can bring the X-ray up on screen and sort of have a bit of a chat with the patient and things like that. So when you're booking that follow-up with the consultant, what you might want to be doing is linking to that very first appointment, just so you get one invoice out for that day's activity. So this is really here just to help you select this. And obviously, if you've got a poorly patient who's been in a number of times and you're not up to date with your billing, you might have a few more entries in the middle of the screen here, which you'll be clicking through and then saying, well, which one's the right one to link it to? So hopefully this gives you a bit more information anyway and makes that billing episode selection where you're linking lots of things together a bit easier. So we'll come out of there. I don't need that appointment, so we'll just not save it. The next change that I want to have a look at is around billing episodes, but how they close, particularly around cancelled bookings. So if I go back to my home area, and what I'll do is I'll just have a quick search for my settings app, and the one that I want is scheduling settings. So again, as an admin, I can get into that. We've got an option here now called, under a heading of billing, called auto close billing episode for cancelled or DNA appointments. That used to exist under this outpatient heading, and it used to only apply to outpatients. So what it would mean is if Stuart had an appointment booked today and I didn't show up, then if this was toggled on, what Compucare would have done is you would cancel my appointment, drop me back to the wait list, and the billing episode would close. So I wouldn't be sat in the outpatient billing screens. You wouldn't be necessarily billing me a cancellation fee and things like that. It would just, clear everything up. It didn't do that for inpatient. So if I was booked to come in today for my hip replacement and I don't come in, Compucare was kind of thinking, well, that's quite high value. We probably want to be, charging the patient something for this. But actually, in practice, a lot of the time, hospitals were rearranging those bookings and just getting that, £10,000 a week later or something like that. So by moving it away from outpatients and up to just billing in general, it now applies to both types of bookings, and the little toggle here gives you that information. So what does this look like in practice? So I've got a patient booked for today, an inpatient. And if I go into here, I've got James on the screen when it loads. There we go. And James is booked in for today. He's coming in for this knee procedure, but he can't come in for some reason. The consultant's sick and we've got to reschedule. The patient's failed their pre-assessment and we need to move it on a week or something like that. So what you can do is you can right click and you can go to edit and cancel, or we can just do the edit and cancel from the top. So when I cancel that, it's going to ask me what the reason is. And when I use my drop down here, I'll just say patient's rescheduled, and we will save that. Spin around for a second. So it's now dropped that patient back to a wait list, which is what that reschedule would have done. It's going to cancel that inpatient booking. At this point, it's giving me the option as a user to go, well, James didn't give us a lot of notice here. We are actually going to charge him. If I want to add a cancellation charge, I can click it and do it. But if I don't want to, and I'm happy that actually he's just going to come next week instead, then what I can do is I can press finish. And if I just go and grab the filter here to look at cancelled ones, we'll just have a look at James should appear again. But what it's done is it's completely cancelled it, which is the right thing to do. And when I go to the billing, it's all grayed out. And the only option that's available to me is unbill. So the benefit of this change with that toggle that I showed on the setup screens is that the inpatient billing app doesn't have James sat within it because we're not planning to bill him. We get the option to add a charge if we want to have a penalty fee for him not showing up. And if we miss adding that penalty charge at some point and want to come back to it, you can still unbill it, add the charge and rebill it. So, but while still leaving the appointment cancelled. So it just tidies things up really for the billing teams. They're only dealing with the stuff that you are trying to collect monies for. So coming away from billing episodes, another change that we've made on a finance side is around patient estimates. And this applies, I'll only show it in the outpatient estimate, but it applies in both screens, inpatient and outpatient. So if I have a patient who's inquiring about coming for care, and maybe I'll just use my own record, and we'll say they're inquiring about coming to see Dr. Jones. We're going to, they're inquiring about a hip appointment rather than a knee, just in case there's any difference. They're going to be self-funding rather than insured, and they want to know how much that appointment's going to be. You can generate an estimate to screen, which we've shown previously, and this will just spin round and you get like a pseudo invoice that says, okay, there's a £200 consult fee based on what you've told the system. The change that we've put in is if there are other charges to be added, so we know it's likely that someone's going to request some radiology, we could do MRI and then we could pick the charge and we could add that onto the estimate. The change that we've made is this little toggle here about whether you want to override the price of that item. So this is security access controlled, so it's only available if you've got the access to override charge prices anyway. But if you're kind of working up a more custom estimate for somebody and you want to give a bit of discount, or because they're going to have everything on the same day, you're not going to charge them the same amount and things like that, you can just toggle that on and then you can change the price. So I could say, you know what, that's going to be £500, something like that. And then I could estimate it again. And then it's going to show me both the consult fee and the adjusted price on there as well. So it's just a little extra bit of flexibility, and again is available on the inpatient side as well. So if you were looking at the type of prosthesis and adjusting a more generic item by the override price you want for the particular one you're going to order in, then you can do it that way as well. Okay, so next one to look at is a change to how automatic credit notes are posted when you haven't quite done your month end. So I'm going to have to show some config screens first of all. So if I just go to years and periods, and when we're looking at this screen within here, I'll just filter this the other way around. And what we can see is for the month of July, I should be in 2022 month 4 because I start in the April for my financial year. When I look at my actual company within here and we look at Street Seaver Hospital, I'm really late doing June's month end, so I am still actually sat in 2022-03, which is June. So what would have happened with this is if I just go and search for another patient, and instead of me, we'll use Stephanie Grantham, and we'll pick her record. And when I go to the Outpatient Bookings app on here, I've got, we'll look at all appointments for all time. We'll have a look at all the attended ones. We'll just bring everything to screen. And I've got an appointment that happened on the 28th of June, so was dated within June's period. It's already completed and I've already billed it. So if I look at the invoice for it, when I bring the invoice to screen, what we've got is it's been posted into June, which is right, because that's when the income and activity took place. But I actually created the invoice today. So that's always worked that way. But what would happen is if I was realizing actually I've made a mistake with this invoice and I need to unbill this appointment and rebill it, Compucare would have generated an automatic credit note and posted it automatically to the patient's account, but it would have done it based on the 28th of July and posted that into the period of July. So if I go to unbill this, and we can just have a look at that by coming out of the Bookings app and going into the patient transactions, When we look at the credits on here, we'll just have a look at all dates. And my credits. Can't quite see it on the screen, but not to worry. The essentially the change is that it would post it back into June. So if all the activity on the invoice that you're unbilling is June, and June is still open, it'll post it back to the last day of June. Therefore, what you're doing is recognizing the income in June and also reversing it back out in June, rather than overstating 1 month in your accounts and reversing it back out the following. So that's the change that we've made. Again, you can have a play with that in your testing systems and have a look at how that's going to work for you. So the next bit that I needed to go on to was around care pathways. So we have shown previously within the system that we've got a code table called pathways, and I've got a pathway that I've set up before called HIP pathway. You can have as many of these as you like, and it's got a name and it's got a load of pathway tasks, and those tasks about giving the patient back their values and doing their discharge summary and booking the physio go against the inpatient booking as a series of tasks. So if I come back to my bedboard, and we'll have a look at Lucy Talon when it loads in a second. Down to here, and if I click onto here, the benefit of using that pathway is you get these tasks automatically then added within here, so you can tick them off as you go along your normal processes, but you also get the pathway displayed on any of the episode of care banners that you see wherever you're looking at the patient. So that was great if you had sort of manually referred and added patients to the system. But if you're a private hospital that is perhaps using the NHSE referral service, what was Choose and Book, that didn't automatically populate. So if I come out of the bedboard screen and we'll just type in services, we'll have a look at e-referral services, and I've got a one set up for HIPs. Then within here, you've always been able to say, if I get someone referred by ERS that comes through this service, then populate the specialty with T&O. We might even want to say, and populate the treatment function with T&O as well for completeness. The change that we've done here is to have the care pathway specified against the service. So I could then say, if anyone is referred through this method, assign that care pathway to the episode of care automatically. Therefore, it's always visible in the banner, it's always visible on the patient task screen within the bedboard and things like that. So it just means everyone gets a clear view of this is a hip or a knee or a cataract or a laser pathway and things like that, or refractive pathway. So that's the change. So the last bit that I'll go on to, and then I'll hand over to Tom, is around medical record tracking. So we've made some changes to the way medical record tracking works to hopefully simplify it for the people that are responsible for pulling those records from the archives and distributing them around the hospital. So the first change I need to go into is at the code table level. So we've got a code table called locations. Some people sometimes still refer to it as departments. And if I go into locations, and I'll just order this, I'll have a look at my outpatient department. So against a location, we used to have an option down the bottom here for auto reserve medical record. So what it would mean is anyone booked into the outpatient department, let's fire a reservation off to the health records team to say, we need this file for this patient on this day and time. The feedback that we've had from users of the medical record tracking functionality is that that was too much of a catch-all. Actually, it needed to be more granular. So the change that we've made, both at an inpatient or day case bed level, but also at an outpatient room level, is we've made it so that you can specify against each room whether it does or it doesn't need to fire one of these reservations. So you can see here I've got this auto reserve medical records set to yes on this one, and this means if anyone's booked into consult room 1, we want that reservation to fire. If I go back to something like my assessment room, actually that's not the primary appointment that the patient's in for. It might be happening earlier ever so slightly, but it's not the one that needs that file with it. So in this case, We've toggled that to no, when it won't fire a reservation. So it just means that there's less noise going on in the medical record tracking screens, and they can actually see what it is that they're being requested to provide. The other option that we've changed is around limiting the number of reservations that are fired per patient in the day. So if I use my scheduling settings app again, and we'll just go into that instead of looking at all this billing episode stuff now, we'll just scroll down to the bottom and you've got this section called medical record tracking. And in here, we've got a new option, which is to limit the medical record reservations for the day. So it says here, limits reservations to 1 instance per patient per day. So I've already booked a patient in for today. And if we go and have a look at the reservations here, even though they're off to see Dr. Jones and then they're off to have some x-rays done, it's only fired the 1 reservation. And so it just means that it's tidied that up, whereas previously you would have had 2 or 3 lines in here for the same patient. The other change that we've done within here, just moving on to something different, is when I mark that file as being prepared, and then I can also perhaps check it out with a bunch of other files. We've got it now so that you can say, well, where's it going? We know it's meant to be going to outpatients, but is it going somewhere along the way? So it might be it needs to go to the admin block or something like that. The MedSec's going to have a look at it first, make sure it's all together and things like that. So if I check this out on here, what it's done now is we've relabeled something here. So it used to be called just location, and we now call it requested location, which is ultimately the end destination that this file still needs to end up at. But we've also got the ability within here to show that it's checked out to the admin block at the moment. And there's some new column options within here to be able to add on the column of where is it currently. So I know where it wants to go, but where is it now? And likewise, we've extended the filter pane to be able to say, find me anything that's currently in the admin block, so I know what they've still got hold of and things like that. So it just means that it's a lot easier to be able to track things around the hospital and know where anything is at any point by sort of clicking on it. The other bit that we've done is we've improved this movement history down the bottom. So you've now got this kind of audit that happens against each record as it moves about. So it says that it was reserved by me in this case, but would have generally been another bookings user. And then by me, I've prepared it, I've checked it out, it's gone to admin. And whilst we're only showing the last few activities here, if this has been back and forth and it's gone to outpatients, then it's gone back to admin, then it's got checked back in at the records library. We've got this view full movement as well, where you can see all of the activities that have gone on for that particular medical record. So hopefully for health records teams, it's going to make things a lot easier for them to know where records are at any point and who's had it and when and things like that. So just one final change, and then I'll hand over to Tom, is if I look at this patient, Ryan Lincoln, and we'll just go and click on that record. Up at the top, we've simplified how we're displaying within the patient banner the medical record tracking data. So it used to say medical record status, and then it would have a little colon, and then it would say it's checked out to this location, or it's in medical records library and things like that. But it was quite a lot of text running across here. What we've done is we've made it so we're now just using this app icon here to show that that's the medical record status. And you can still click this here, and you can still then drill into for just Ryan the particular reservation. And instead of seeing lots of history built up in here of all the times it's ever been checked in and out, it's just one paper file. So again, we've got within here that all that data is now moved to this movement history and the full movement history here. So it just makes things a lot tidier for all the users doing this function. The final bit on here that users can do is we've obviously got quite a number of fields on the screen, and things like the destroying notes and some notes that we've added when we checked it out and things like that. These are blank at the moment, so do we need to see them? So one option we do have, and users can decide this for themselves, is the ability to go to user settings and to be able to switch on compact mode. We've shown this previously, and it means that screens like the check-in screen can get more rows to screen and things like that. But what it means to the medical record team is that if I hit save on there, it'll hide those destruction notes. The record hasn't been destroyed, so why are we bothering to try and show destruction notes? So it just tidies up the reading pane a little bit more. Only thing to bear in mind is it does squeeze this row up a little bit more, so obviously it could end up looking quite small depending on what monitor size they've got and what resolution they're running at and things like that. So again, it's not system wide, it's user optional, and they can decide what they want to do with it. So in terms of what I was going to show, that is everything for me for today. So what I'm going to do is just move back over to the demonstration, and I'll hand you over to Tom, who's going to live demo some more features.
Thanks for that, Stu. Just before I continue, I'll just offer you a reminder, there is a live Q&A session going ahead in the Teams bar as well. So if you have got any questions, please feel free to pop them in there. So the first enhancement I'm going to show you is that from build 842, we've added period of day and custom times to Outpatient Next Free multi-bookings. So I'm going to go into our Outpatient Next Free multi-booking app here, and then I'm just going to load up the cataract review template. As you can see, it's produced a couple of appointments we're looking for there. So just pressing next. So down the left-hand side here in the search panel, we've got a couple of amendments we've made. So as you can see, we've now got the period of day, so you can select morning, afternoon, or evening, but you can be more specific. So with that, we can now set times. So for instance, I've got it set between 11 and 2. So we'll just include that, and we'll just search for our patients in here. So I'll just bring up Mr. Alan Abbott. So searching for that, you can see it's going to bring up a couple of appointments there for 12 and 20 past. So we'll go ahead and create those. So just creating those, we'll add some billing episodes. So we've got those appointments created there. So it just gives you more flexibility when looking to book multiple appointments. So the next couple of features we're going to look at, we've added into our check-in app. So if I'm going to go ahead and go into our check-in app, both these enhancements are within 842 as well. So the first one we're going to look at is that we can auto arrive linked appointments, so we don't have to arrive each individual appointment. So we'll just look at today's bookings, and we'll see we have the 2 bookings that we made just a moment ago there for Mr. Alan Abbott. So what I'm going to do now, up in the settings cog in the top corner, we have this new toggle here, so auto arrive linked bookings. So I'm going to toggle that to yes. Then I'm going to just click on the first appointment here that we have, and then we're going to set this to arrive. Okay, as you'd expect, it's arrived the first booking there, but also on the second one, you can see it's got the green dot here. It's also set this to a status of arrived as well. So it just automates that process for you. The next feature that we've added is also within this check-in app here, so that we've added that the users need to see the date of birth on confirmed patient details. So just a slight change we've made. So if I'm just going to arrive this appointment here for James Adams, when I arrive, there is the confirm patient details button here. So I'm just going to press that. We've now added this section in here for date of birth, so it's nice and visible when you are confirming the patient details. So just come out of that and get back to the home screen. So the next enhancement that we've added is that we've added a care setting to the inpatient template. So this can be populated without any sort of user input on there at all. So I'm just going to go into add an inpatient booking. And within here, I'm just going to go up to our settings toggle up here. And within here, we've got save templates. And for example, we'll use this one here, the endoscopy template. So I'll just edit that. So within this template, we've now added the care setting type. So you can see it's pre-populated with the endoscopy service. So I'll save that. And when we save that, we'll see the care setting type has populated with the endoscopy service. So just exiting out of that now. Moving on to the next development. So we've added a purchase filter to the Inpatient Bookings app. So if I go into our Inpatient Bookings, and it should bring up all of our patients due today. There we go. So within the filter bar down the left-hand side here, so I'm just going to maximize that, and I'm now going to go to show more filters. So as you can see, we've added this option to filter by purchaser. So if, for instance, I just search for Bupa, and then we'll minimize that, and we can see it's brought up all the bookings relating to Bupa there as well. What we can do with this also, we can add multiple purchases. So if I then go ahead and add AXA, for instance, or Aviva, sorry, we'll see it's then added the booking there, which has the purchaser of Aviva. So the next enhancement that I'm going to show you is from our build 843, and it's the ability for site laterality and level to be mandatory when recording a procedure. So I'm going to go add a new outpatient booking, and then we'll just add Alan Abbott as our patient again. And within procedure, we can see we'll look to add a procedure here. So currently the procedure is the only mandatory area. So what we can do now, if we go into our settings cog up here, then we go to edit layout, we can then look to add procedure site as a mandatory field and laterality as a mandatory field. So if I go ahead and save that, it then won't let me save it without adding specific detail into each of those boxes. So back onto our home screen now. The next enhancement I'm going to show you is to be able to configure a theatre to be a single area theatre. So to show you what this means in practice, I'm just going to go into our theatre tracking, and we'll see we have Mr. George Roberts here. So he was sent for a while ago, so I'm just going to toggle this to arrived, and then you'll see when toggle to arrive, it would previously pop up with the next patient option there, should there be a next patient waiting. So if I just come back out of there, and if I go into our theatre code table, and then I'm just going to go to theatre 4 and then edit this. So you can see we've added this theatre type area, so we can change from multiple to single area. So we shall save that. And then if we go back into our theatre tracking, back to Mr. Roberts. So when we toggle this into arrive now, there's no prompt pop up for next patient because it isn't possible to fulfill that. So it just immediately goes straight through to the next stage of the theatre tracking. So the final enhancement I'm going to show you before I pass on to Mark is from our build 844, and it's within our patient area. So it's the ability to expand and collapse attachment folders within the attachment sections of a patient. So if I just go into our patients, and I'll just bring up Stephanie Grantham here, and then just going to go up to the top right corner to the paperclip icon for the patient attachments. So as you can see, we've changed the layout of this slightly, so the folders can be collapsed and expanded, and there's a bit more organization there. So if there are a number of items and documents in there, it makes it a lot more easy to navigate around. One thing we have also added as well is this option to hide empty folders. So that with a patient, there can be a lot of folders that build up. So if I toggle this, as you can see, it drills it right down so we can literally see the folders that we need to see. So that's all the enhancement I have to show you today. I'll pass over to my colleague Mark, who's going to go into a few more.
Perfect. Thanks very much for that, Tom. So as Tom said, I'm just going to run through a few more of the enhancements that we've done between 842 and 844 today. So the first one I just wanted to take a look at is something that we put into our 844 build. So what we've done is we've just made a change to the letter designer. In the letter designer now, what you'll be able to do is add in a subject field. It'll also give you a live preview of that subject field as well. So what this does is, in the correspondence app, you'll be able to see this. And as well as that, if you're sending that piece of correspondence as an email, that'll just pop up in the subject field of the email as well. So if we have a look at this in action, I'm just going to go into our Letter Designer app. That's just come up on my other screen, so I'll just pull it across. The one I'm going to do today is one of the outpatient letters. So if we just go into this once it's loaded up. If we go into the menu on the left-hand side and in the info pane, you'll see this new one here, which is for the subject. And then we've got the preview of the subject underneath as well. So you could do two things here. You can enter data fields, which we'll go into in a second, and you can also free type. So if I just put in an example for this one, so if we just go for appointment reminder, and then if we just go for, and if we just use the show fields, if we just use this to have a look at the patient name. So I'm just going to scroll down to P. And you can see we've got on here patient name, title, initial and surname. So if we put that on at the end, you can see it's just dropped in there in the subject field, and it's just given us a preview of that as well to let us know how it would look. So if we just go ahead and save that, and if we close it and come back out of Letter Designer, what I'm going to do now is just go into one of my patients. So I'm going to use Mr. Holder here, and I should have an outpatient booking just waiting for him. So if we go ahead and just print the appointment letter, what I'm going to do just for this example is I'm just going to save it off as a PDF. I'll also save it onto the timeline as well, just so we can see what it looks like on the patient timeline with this new subject field as well. So everything's done there. If we just click save, and I'm just going to save that off. Perfect. And if we come back out of there, so if we have a look at what it looks like on the timeline, if I just get that loaded up, you can see it's dropped in at the top there. So it's coming as the 28th of the 7th. And if you just hover over it, it'll give you the full title there. You can see it's got our appointment reminder for Mr. G Holder as we set in those fields. If we just have a look in the correspondence app as well to see what this is doing in there. What you should be able to see is we've got the one that's dropped in there from the 28th of the 7th. You can see it's got the subject field in there as we set it. You can also search by that now as well. So if I just go to the top here and change the drop down to subject, if I just put in Mr. G Holder, it should come back with two of them here. Which do oh, what's that? Here we go. So it's come back with the two we've got. You can see it's got the date and time against those as well. So this might be a bit more useful on the search criteria. If you do things like add date fields into here, you can search by the date and it's going to come back with those letters that have got that in the subject. So it's just making searching for subjects and when they go out as emails, it's just making them a bit easier to see in the correspondence app and in Compucare. Perfect. So that's everything I wanted to run through for the first one. Moving on to the second one I'm going to take a look at today. We've added the ability to add different priorities in Scheduler, and we've also just enhanced that now as well. So we've just made it a little bit easier to see when they're looking in the Scheduler screens and things like that. So if we just go into our schedule reasons before we go into this one. I'm just going to have a look at one example where I've got this set up. So if I go look into emergency bookings here, you can see the new thing that we've added here is if it's a priority type on the reason type, you can see you can now assign it a color. So that color is going to show up on the scheduler against that priority, against the availability. If we just add a new one so we can see that in action as well and how it works when you're setting it up. I'm just going to go for video consultations only. And we're going to set it as that priority reason. And if we just set a color against it, so if we just set a dark green color against that one and save it off. So that's fallen into there now for us. So if we just go into a clinician, I'm going to use Dr. Wilson for this example. I'm just going to set some availability up for Dr. Wilson. So if we just go on new outpatient availability. And I'm just going to set this in as a standard one. We'll go for a day in the week. We'll do it as today's date as a Thursday. We'll do it for a few weeks and we'll say it's between 9 and 5, just so we can have a look at this against a few different ones. You can see we've got the priority reasons down here. So if I just set the ones up that we kind of had a look at, we'll say that emergency bookings is in the morning and we'll just do that for 1 hour between 9 and 10. And we'll do the video consultation one that we set up as well. We'll say that's between 12 and 3, for example. Perfect. So we've got them added in. If we just save that and click finish. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to jump into our scheduler screen so we can see this working. So I'll just go into the single resource scheduler. And if we just have a look at that specific clinician, so we've got Dr. Wilson there. If we just search, we can see it's come up with his dates there. Perfect. So if we just have a look at one of the ones for next month, just so we can see it all dropping in. So you can see there at the top, we've got that time allocated for the emergency bookings. If you click on it, it will just tell you in the reading pane as normal. And we've got the time in the afternoon set as well for the video consultations. So it's just putting those color codes against that, just so it's a bit easier when you've got your multi-scheduler screen open, be a little bit easier to see the different types of bookings you can have against different times, and just making booking staff's lives a little bit easier. So coming out of that, the next one I wanted to take a look at is an enhancement that we've put into our 842 build. So the purpose of this user story is just to allow users to quickly navigate to supplier catalogs using PIP codes. This will allow them to view specific stock items as well as order them as well if they've got that ability through websites. So to get us started, I'm just going to go into our supplier's code table to show you how we set this up against the supplier. I've already set this up against one called Farmer Finder. If I scroll down a little bit, you'll see we've got this new field here called supplier URL. So we'll have a look at when we open this up and look at the website and the catalog that we're going to have a look at. You can see that I've copied in the supplier URL up to the end of a specific part, and then we've got a 0 in brackets at the end. What this 0 does is it just makes it live, and it just recognises that a specific item PIP code you present at an item level, it will recognise that specific PIP code against the charge master item. So if I come back out of there, and I'm just going to go into our stock control suppliers app. I've already set one up against this. You can see I've got a catalog number in here. If we just go into it to see where that's set up, you can see it gives you the option to put the catalog number PIP code here. So what that is that's everything on the supplier website on the catalog that is after the .co.uk. And because we put that 0 in, it's just going to recognise that this is going to pull us into that specific catalog item that we've requested. So if I click cancel on there, you'll see there's the option to pull this up, open a supplier URL, and that's just gone onto my other screen. So if I just drag that across so we can have a look what's happening. So you can see again, if we just take a look at that web address that we was talking about, we had everything up to the .co.uk, and then we had the product code at the end there. So it's just recognised both of those pieces of code, and it's brought us through to that specific item in the catalogue. So if I just jump back into my Compucare screen, there's a few different areas that you can see this from in Compucare. Just to mention a few of them, if we have a look in our prescriptions app, you can see that it does mention it in here as well. I've just got one set up against the patient that we was looking at earlier. You can see in the reading pane, we've got this charge master item level here. So you can open that URL straight from here. There is also the ability, you could do this in the supplier app as well, to open the table which shows you different suppliers. So you might have several suppliers that are against the same charge master item, and you can set up URLs against all of those, and you can quick go to the catalog items that you've got set up. So there is the ability to do that as well. Just finally on this one, I will just show you we could do this through a purchase order as well. This is probably the most common way that users would get to it. So if we just search for our supplier, Farmer Finder, and I'm just going to put it into the main store there. So if we have a look at this from the item level, I'm just going to look for our charge item. So we've got the codeine tablets there. You'll see again, it just gives you those two options to look at the URL as well as open the supplier list as well. I'm just going to fill in the information. So if we say we just want one of those, and just put a nominal code against it for the mandatory information. And if we just click add there, you'll see again, it just drops into that grid for users as well. So there is several places that this is available. And it just gives users prompts to have a look at the catalogs and pricings and things like that while they're making live orders. Perfect, so that's everything I wanted to show you for that one. For the final one, I just wanted to show in our demo today before moving over to some slides. We're going to take a look at a new enhancement that's come out in 842. So the purpose of this one is to provide users with more flexibility around the creation of orders through forms. It now allows users to cancel orders through forms if they're only at a requested stage. So we'll just take a look at our patient again, the one that we've used a couple of times. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add a form result against this patient so we can see this working. So if we choose an episode of care, I've got a recent one open there, and we use the booking from today. So if we just have a look at the form results, I have set up a form specifically for this example. I appreciate it might not be quite accurate of day-to-day practice. So what I've done is I've got this MRI hip and it's just asking them to tip 1 to which service request they require. So each of these is linked to the service request, and once they tick it, what it'll do is it will just bring up an order for that specific service request. It is worth mentioning early on that this is available in the dynamic service request form component as well. So users will be able to do that as well. And what they'll be able to do is, if we just go ahead and do the MRI hip right there and click save. Importantly, if people sign off the form at this point, it will complete it and it won't let them change it. So you do have to do these before the form is signed off. So if we click finish, you can see it's popped up with our form result there. So I'm just going to come out of that and go into the order screen. Hopefully what we should see is, and it has done that, it's just dropped our requested order in there. So you can see it's at the requested stage, it's got our MI hip right. So that's fallen into requested. So what the new ability that we've added is, if we go back into that form result that we've just added, and if we just edit it, so if we thought, well, actually we no longer want that MRI hit right, if we just untick it and click save, and again, if we don't sign it off, jumping back into the order screen, you'll see what that's done is it's just cancelled that for us now. So it's just creating that live scenario where it's keeping up with what you're doing on the form. If we wanted to create a new order from it, so if we just said, well, actually we've changed our mind again on that one, we're going to go ahead and order it again. And if we click finish again, just jumping into the orders app to see what that's doing. You see that we've still got the cancelled one at the top there, so it has got that audit log of that, but it's just opened a new one requested against that order for us. So it does do that. It is worth noting that if you go ahead and start scheduling this, so we'll just run through our next free screen here. We'll just put this into the MRI room. And it should just load up a few dates for us. So if we go ahead and just put that in for a time slot. And then just double check there's no mandatory information. So I'll just put a billing episode in here. Save that off and click save again. And click finish. So you can see that's gone across to appointment scheduled now on our little timeline. If we just go back into that form results, what we should see now is it shouldn't allow us to edit this anymore. So if we go in and try to edit it, it will just give users a little bit of a warning saying that this has already been actioned, so you can no longer cancel it. So there will come a point, like I say, if you sign off the form or if you go ahead to schedule the order or anything like that, it will just then stop users from making any changes against a form level. Perfect, so that's everything I kind of wanted to run through on the demonstration in the system side of things. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to go back to our slide deck because there's a few more things I wanted to have a look at. So the first one is the eDischarge. Just as a reminder to people, we do have a lunchtime webinar series video available on our YouTube channel. So if you haven't seen this already, it's worth taking a look. For those that haven't kind of heard about eDischarge before, what it does is it just runs through sending the discharge summaries through Mesh for inpatient bookings for particular patients. So as part of rolling this out, we have added some new enhancements to it. So there is a failed submissions live tile that you can now add to your home screen, and this will just notify users if there's any failed submissions that have come back, and it will also give them the reason for those as well. So you can see we've got a couple in the down the bottom here as failed submission error messages that you might receive. You can see there's quite a few NHS number ones here. It is worth mentioning that NHS number tracing is something else we can offer as well. Of course, this will just help alongside your FIN submissions and things like that, just to make sure you don't get these types of errors coming up. In terms of other bits I just wanted to talk about, as Stu mentioned at the start, we're just going to take a very quick look at our dark theme. So this is just going to be a preview. It's coming out in 8:45. So what we'll do is in the next webinar, we should be able to have a better look at this in a bit more depth. You can see the dark theme in the screenshot here. It just changes the colouring on some of the tiles that you see in your live Compucare home screen. So users can get to this setting. You can see there's a little arrow here, so they can get to this through their own user settings. So this is a user specific setting. If I just scroll through, I've got a few different screenshots to show the different screens in this working.
You're still muted, Mark.
Sorry about that. So you can see if I just scroll to our next one, this is our check-in screen and kind of how it looks there. You can see we've got high contrast colours going on against the dark background just to make it a bit more obvious. This shows up even more in our scheduler screen as well. So you can see we've got the high contrast blues and reds. And we've just done this to conform a bit more to modern day apps. We appreciate that dark themes are available in quite a lot of modern apps these days. So we've added it into ours as well. Perfect. So the next thing I just wanted to mention very quickly is our release notes on the roadmap website. You can see here, importantly, what we've added is there's a little video icon on the right-hand side of some of our releases now. So what this will allow you to do is, whenever our developers create one of these user stories and do the development work, what they'll do is they'll create a video, and they've now uploaded these to the release notes. So if you see the little video icon, you will be able to see how this particular development works in action. So it's worth seeing that if there's anything you particularly wanted to see on the release notes. And that's kind of everything that I wanted to talk about today. What I'm going to do now is I'm just going to hand back over to Stu. He's going to run through any Q&As that have come up today, as well as just close us off for today's webinar.
That's great. Thanks, Mark. If you can just skip us over to the questions. Okay, so we've had 3 come through. The first one is to do with the slide I started on, which is to do with the removal of the SHAC service. So we've removed that for both Compucare and the report generator. So that means that from 8.42 onwards, you do not need to have the SHAC service running anymore, and it can be completely decommissioned from your installation. So once you've upgraded, speak to our support team. They'll advise you what files need to be removed and what needs to be switched off. But essentially, as soon as you've got 42 loaded, or above 44 even, it'll be looking, it won't be looking for that SHAC service anymore anyway. It'll be looking for that client overrides file that we looked at that had the database name and server name in it and things like that. So yeah, if you want to tidy up your installation, you can ask our help to do that. So, okay, second question. Will there be any changes on receipting, especially receipting multiple invoices from insurance companies? Will it be possible to show the amount paid to us in error, or to put in some amounts that have been deducted in error and things like that? So I think with this particular one, we're going to need to pick up this question in a bit more detail with the user that's raised it. But kind of high level, my understanding is that when you're using the purchaser batch payment screen, so you've got a remittance that's come in and you want to put that £30,000 into the system and put in the transactions that it relates to, that you will obviously key in the batch header, which is I've received £30,000 from this party, and then you will go through and you will add, and it's against this patient invoice and that patient invoice and things like that. As it currently stands, I don't think it does let you put a comment in or a reference in, which would be my thinking of where this would need to go in terms of, okay, they've shortfalled us because of this, or they've recouped us because of that. So I think that's probably a development that we'll need to look at for the future. There is a slight confusion in this, in that I think if you import the electronic remittance file that you receive from AXA or Bupa, etc., into Compucare rather than manually typing it in, I think the comment field or reference field will be populated by what the insurer has told you on that remittance. So I think we've got a bit of disparity there in between how the system works when you pull it in electronically versus manually keying. So we'll have a look into all of that and confirm back to the user that's raised this how it's working, and if there are any gaps in the functionality, we'll log them for a future release. But certainly in 8.42 to 44, which I think is the question, there isn't anything in there around this particular change. And the final one looks to be related to the one of the items that Tom demoed, which was when you are using the check-in screen and you arrive a patient, it comes up with a little series of post actions: print the remittance, print the registration form, take a swipe of the patient's card, you know, and confirm the patient details if you want to do that. Check their postcode, check their GP, check their date of birth, which was the actual change that we've made. The question here is, I think, whether that can be made mandatory. Currently, no, it can't be. We assume it would be part of the reception users' standard process, that we don't need the computer to be forcing them to do it. It should be just what they're doing by default. Obviously, happy for people to offer advice on that and tell us that it does need to be made mandatory. But I think for the moment, what it will do is it will audit if they do check the details or not. So if you've got a problem with someone who's not checking the details, and you know, you'll be able to go back and say, well, you haven't been doing this and it's part of your job, you need to be, but the system's not going to force them to do it right now. No. Okay, so looking at the Q&A, I think that is pretty much all of the questions that we've had. If anyone thinks of anything at all afterwards, you know, either you know, thinking back on this webinar, or as you start to try and play with some of these enhancements on your test system and things like that, just drop us a note or a question, you know, down to the marketing@streetsever address there. You know, it's always good to stay up to date, so thank you for attending today's webinar. We've got a lot of videos now on the YouTube channel. There's a lot of useful articles on our website under the news postings and things like that. But yeah, I think that's it for today. So thank you very much for joining us for all of that, and we hope to see you again on the next one, which will be sometime around November.